What's up everyone? I'm Jacob, and a couple weekends ago I attended my first ever VGC regional tournament in Secaucus, New Jersey. I had a ton of fun, so I wanted to give a quick recap of that trip, talk about my tournament run, and give a quick team report as well. You can find the Pokepaste and the rental code in the description below, and let me know what you think. Leave a like and a comment, I'd really appreciate that. Let me know what teams you're running on the ladder right now, if you're planning on attending any other tournaments coming up. I know Pokemon just announced that as soon as June 7th we could have locals again, which is really exciting for me. And let's get into it. So I started playing Pokemon competitively in early 2020, and I got hooked. I was playing on Pokemon Showdown while I was supposed to be taking online classes. Just had a lot of fun. I've been trying to absorb as much as I can ever since then. So I was stoked whenever I found they were going to host an in-person regional pretty close to where I'm at. And so I made sure I camped right on the site at 7 o'clock whenever they opened up registration for Secaucus, got my spot, made sure I could get down there. Ended up finishing 3 and 5 on the day, 87th overall out of about 140. And while I didn't quite crack the top cut, I had a lot of fun, met a lot of really cool people. I wanted to just let you know my thoughts on the team that I used, and let's start with the team building process. Now you might be looking at this team and thinking to yourself that it looks pretty familiar. It's because it probably does. I ended up using the exact same 6 Pokemon as Jesus Jimenez, called Susej VGC, as he used to win the Victory Road and GG Tour Series 12 Challenge back in January. Susej wrote a great team report that I've linked in the description below, but I didn't intend to use those same 6, just kind of happened that way. And so let's take a look on how I ended up with those same 6 Pokemon. First, start with Palkia. Of course, I've been a big believer in Palkia all of Series 12. I think, it has a great typing, great natural bulk, and especially with some of the investment. I ended up using a very similar spread to Susej. I took a couple of points out of Special Defense, put him into Speed to try to speed creep, maybe outspeed a couple of bulkizations at +1. It didn't end up working out that way in the tournament. But I think Palkia has just so many tricks up its sleeve that it can use. It's pretty standard. You're going to see the same kind of coverage moves on most Palkias, but it's a fantastic Dynamax option. Has really nice utility outside of Dynamax. The high crit chance on Spacial Rend is always a nice win con in the end game if things look dire, as well as Trick Room you can set up for the rest of the team. As I don't really have the speediest Pokemon in the world outside of Zacian, which I chose as the second restricted Pokemon here. Zacian went the very bulky spread. It can live a Water Spout from a Choice Specs Kyogre in the rain. It can live 2 Astral Barrages if I have Light Screen up, or if the Calyrex doesn't have a Life Orb. And it can live a Precipice Blades from a non-Life Orb Groudon. It's really nice bulky spread. I ended up being outsped by most of the other Zacians that I ran into, so the supporting options on this team were really, really important in my tournament run, as well as that Trick Room on Palkia. But I needed 4 more Pokemon to fill out the team. So the first thing I wanted to lock down was my secondary Dynamax option. I wanted to make sure that I had another mode that I could run with the team, another really strong Pokemon in Max, and so I looked at a couple of the Pokemon you're seeing now. Landorus, of course, was the first option that I chose. I think it's really strong. I think it has a really good spot in the metagame, and every metagame it's ever been in. But it was just a little bit too slow. It didn't really offer too much utility outside of its Dynamax or when its Max ended. And unless you're running a White Herb, you really get bogged down by opposing Intimidates, but then if you run the White Herb, you have the sleep that you have to worry about. And so it's, it's a trade-off there that I didn't really want to play with. And so I was thinking, well, Zapdos can set up electric terrain for itself, run Safety Goggles really, really well to beat opposing Sun teams. You also have that utility option that you could have gone with, Eerie Impulse, to help with damage mitigation. But just, base 100, just such a crowded speed tier. I didn't really want to risk games on a speed type Charizard turn 1, really just crossing my fingers and hoping that I won it. And so I was like, well, let's, just go with the fastest Pokemon that we can find. Regieleki, no one is going to outspeed that. But again, outside of its Dynamax, if you're using the physical version, the best things you're going to be able to do are still those electric type attacks. Very weak Assurance, Bounce is really hit or miss, literally. But then if you're going with the special side, it's, what are moves you're going to use outside of electric moves. And so again, just, not too much utility outside of the Dynamax. I really wanted to play a little bit slower and more methodically with this team too. It offered really nice speed control, but again, some of those trade-offs as well. And of course, not having the ground immunity was a big thing that I wanted to keep in mind. So just best of both worlds, take Thundurus. I had that supportive Thundurus on the team earlier to work with the Landorus. I really liked how bulky Thundurus was. I wanted to keep that with the Assault Vest. I wanted to make sure that this Thundurus can survive a Charizard's Max Wildfire, Under Sun, coming off a Blast Burn with a Life Orb, as well as the first turn of that G-Max Wildfire chip damage. So very, very bulky on the special side for Thundurus. Really helped into, the Kyogre, the Calyrex Shadow matchups. And of course it's faster than Charizard, it's faster than all the base 100s, so just run max speed, not too much attack investment, but it's, it still hits reasonably hard in Dynamax. When it's outside of max, it doesn't do too much, but that's where we have Foul Play. Brick Break 4 provide a lot of nice utility for the team that I really, really liked. The Foul Play especially, beating Surprise Weakness policies. I didn't run into any Solgaleos while I was at the tournament, but on ladder, every Solgaleo I ran into, none of them expected the Foul Play on my offensive Thundurus. So it was really, really nice to kind of have that surprise factor as well. But then outside of that, I had the secondary Dynamax option. I needed something to support the team. And so I really wanted something, that could provide redirection, that could slow the game down, really mitigate the damage that I was looking for. And so I had Indeedee on there originally. I really liked Indeedee. I liked what Indeedee could do as far as the follow me's. It could live a ton of hits, didn't even need the Focus Sash. So I could keep that for somebody else. But Indeedee really just has not much other than absorbing damage for your team, which can be really valuable, especially on hyper offense, but for the team composition I was building, it just wasn't really super worthwhile for what I was going for. And so I didn't really want Indeedee. It also has the same kind of problems that Porygon 2 can have whenever it's left alone on the field, is that all my friends are dead syndrome, that it really doesn't put on too much offensive pressure on its own without a little bit of help. Whether you run max special attack on the Indeedee and sacrifice a ton of bulk, it can be really tough to manage on specific team sets like the one I was trying to use. Same with Porygon 2, setting up Trick Room is really, really valuable, especially with the bulky Zacian. I could win the mirror matches there pretty easily. Palkia really likes the Trick Room because I'm running a decent bit of speed, but not the most in the world, especially with the metagame just getting faster and faster, it seems. And Porygon 2 has a lot of really nice options. Could beat special attackers with your Impulse, can beat physical attackers with Foul Play. But again, if you just leave Porygon 2 alone long enough, you really don't have to worry about it putting on too much offensive pressure. And so I settled on, to fill those two spots, the redirection and the damage mitigation, Amoonguss and Grimmsnarl just seemed like pretty natural fits. Grimmsnarl could provide speed control of its own with Thunder Waves, which is really, really valuable in a couple of the matchups I ran into, as well as Amoonguss doing a great job redirecting opposing attacks, helping me set up Trick Room if I needed it, and really just steamrolling under Trick Room. Of course, the minimum speed is very important for opposing Calyrex Ice Riders. If they do get the Trick Room up on me, then I have something to retaliate with. And the Seed Bomb came into play pretty frequently. I ran into a few Kyogres that really didn't appreciate the offensive pressure that my no investment Amoonguss could put on them, which is a lot of fun. And lastly, of course, it's Incineroar. You've got to have the Intimidate. It, isn't quite as mandatory as it might have been in previous formats and previous generations, but still very, very vital to have just the immediate -1 to opposing physical attackers. It's a really nice Zacian counter in and of itself. Even with Sacred Sword on Zacians more and more nowadays, the Incineroar can stomach those hits pretty well and retaliate back with the Flare Blitz, a Parting Shot. Fake Out is really great utility, and it just helps with the positioning on a team like this that puts on a lot of offensive pressure, but only under certain conditions. Really likes having that speed control and the board positioning advantage. Incineroar is just a no-brainer to put on the team. And lastly, just talking about some of the important techs in this team, from the common pairs that I ran in the tournament that I really relied on throughout my run is, starting with, I already mentioned the Seed Bomb and the Foul Play, but can really provided a lot of great utility that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Of course, Seed Bomb gets around the Assault Vest that's pretty common on Kyogres nowadays, as well as Calm Mind variants of Kyogre that I've seen a couple of times here and there, and can do 50% minimum to a Kyogre with no defensive investment, which is really, really nice. I was able to 2-hit KO a Kyogre in my first round matchup in Secaucus. My opponent really just wasn't expecting that, I don't think. As well as, of course, the Foul Play on Thundurus did a really nice job into opposing Lunalas and Calyrex Shadow Riders, but I could put Brick Break on there too. Ran into a couple of Grimmsnarls that, I was able to shut down their screens with the Brick Break on Thundurus. Just worked really, really well outside of the Dynamax. which is what I was going for with Thundurus. Of course, the safety goggles on Incineroar as well, just really valuable into, you know, opposing Amoonguss, Venusaurs. I ran into a Venusaur in my last round. I had a chance to get back to 500 as I was sitting at 3 and 4 on the day at that point, but ran into a Reshiram Groudon team that just really was one of the worst matchups that I could see with my current composition of this team. And again, you know, the Assault Vest on Thundurus just did wonders, allowing me to live, you know, Kyogre Water Spouts, Astral Barrages, really any special attack, a Regieleki even. My second round matchup against Wolf Glick, he had a Regieleki that could hit from the physical and the special side, and just really couldn't do any damage to my Thundurus, which was really nice. Additionally, you know, some of the common pairs, the Palkia Amoonguss, you're going to see a ton from this team. Just really allows Palkia to go for some really low risk Dynamax moves as Amoonguss just absorbs damage on its end. You can also allow Palkia to set up Trick Room and just have Amoonguss have a field day under that with setting up some Spores of its own, Seed Bombs if it needs to deal just a little bit of chip damage. And you know, it does a really nice job allowing Palkia to do everything that Palkia can do. Additionally, I ran Thundurus Palkia pretty frequently as well. The Thundurus Palk lead was my go-to into Sun matchups. Wolf was running this Groudon Lunala team with a Charizard, and I was able to get a really nice surprise KO on his Gastrodon for turn 1 because of the speed advantage that I had from the Thundurus Dynamax, as well as the pressure I was putting on his Charizard, forcing him to switch out. And lastly, Amoonguss Zacian. Zacian, running Substitute, I didn't really talk about it too much to this point, but the Substitute on Zacian, really helpful into opposing Trick Rooms if I don't have the slower team, which, you know, into dedicated Trick Room teams like a Calyrex Ice Rider and a Reshiram, I'm probably going to be faster than the majority of their squad. So having that Substitute, I had to drop one of my coverage moves. I chose to drop Sacred Sword. I was thinking, you know, Palkia has enough anti-Incineroar as well as the Defiant on Thundurus. You know, it's a 50-50 on whether Sacred Sword or Play Rough would have been the better move to drop in that case. I think I stick by it just because of the damage output that Play Rough has on a Zacian that I was running Adamant but only 76 attack EVs. And so really just allowing my Pokemon to do as much as they could. Really loved Amoonguss, just MVP of this team, the unsung hero, even though the mental herb that I had on him didn't activate once during the Secaucus regionals. And so, you know, I would have felt a lot more vindicated if, you know, opposing Amoonguss or Grimmsnarl to try to taunt me a little bit more, but, you know, probably could have gone with the Focus Sash there as be one of the couple of changes I'd make. Some other changes, you know, think about maybe taking those EVs away from the speed in Palkia. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, that I tried to speed creep just a little bit on Palk's end. Probably didn't need to do that. The bulk would have been a little bit more helpful, as well as, you know, really the offense. Palkia does do a ton of damage, especially in Dynamax, but if I'm facing a max HP Zacian, for example, I think it's only a 65% chance to one-hit KO with Max Quake. A couple of points into the special attack for Palk really helps those rolls. I can do a lot more damage. I ran into a couple of Life Orb Thunduruses that didn't really have any investment that I came just really close to one-shotting with Max Geyser, but, you know, missed out on, and, you know, could turn the tides of a match. So a little bit more offense on Palkia. Could think about the Focus Sash on Amoonguss, but for the rest of them, you know, I felt pretty comfortable with what I had, and ended up, you know, this was a comfort level team for me. I'd been using the squad for about 2 or 3 months at this point, prior to the tournament. Just really felt comfortable with my calcs with Palkia and the bulky Zacian. I really just wanted to bring something that I knew I could, you know, I wasn't going to beat myself. This is a team that, you know, it's very consistent if you know what you're doing. Of course, my first in-person tournament, first regionals, it's, you know, finishing 3 and 5, I feel pretty good about that. I was able to win a game off of Wolf Glick, which is a huge accomplishment in and of itself. And I was able to, you know, learn a lot about myself as a player, as well as, you know, just the community on the whole. And I'm really excited to attend more tournaments, you know, if locals are coming back pretty soon, hopefully. And then just looking forward to Gen 9, really just diving right into the deep end. But yeah, so, you know, really enjoyed my time at Secaucus, had a wonderful weekend there between a couple of work days on Friday and Monday, but, you know, talk about some of the specific matchups I ran into. Of course, I'm going to highlight that game against Wolf Glick, but let's take a look at some of the matchups from the tournament that I think I learned a lot from. So I mentioned I won my round 1 matchup. It was against Connor Sweetheart, who was running this really cool hyper-offensive team with Calyrex Shadow Rider and Scarf Kyogre. He had a switcheroo Whimsicott that I had to play around a lot in game 2 trying to put the eject button on my Palkia. But it was a lot of fun, really nice match. I won that one in 2 games. My reward for that was to move on to round 2 playing the 2016 World Champ. So game against Wolfglick, I was obviously very nervous. Someone who prepared a lot for this event by watching some of his videos, really learning a lot from him and other content creators, but I felt a little bit more at ease once I saw his team. I had played against a lot of Sun compositions in the ladder, and as I prepared for this team in other smaller tournaments. He was running this Lunala Groudon team, a physical for the most part Regieleki. I think it was Assault Vest, but I'm not 100% sure. As well as a Charizard, a Gastrodon, and a Grimmsnarl. And so I felt really comfortable leading that Thundurus Palkia set that I mentioned a little bit earlier. I was able to turn 1 just click max Airstream and Spacial Rend. I felt really comfortable with that because, again, I knew that even if he Dynamaxes Charizard, he was going to be able to get 1 attack off because the Airstream and the Rend weren't going to completely knock out a Gmax Charizard, but my Thundurus survives a Gmax Wildfire off of Blast Burn, Life Orb, and Sun boosted, as well as will live to see the next turn as long as he doesn't double into it. And so I was, felt really comfortable just Airstream Spacial Rend to the Charizard slot. He switched out to Gastrodon, and that's always a 1-hit KO for that combo. So it felt really nice to have my preparation work out turn 1, and I was able to kind of leverage that into an advantage. He really couldn't really get anything going after that, as I was able to get Incineroar in, wear his Groudon down a little bit. He did have the White Herb on Groudon, but a couple of parting shots and extra Intimidates did the trick there, and leveraging that advantage into winning game 1, which is really cool. But for the rest of that set, he kind of saw through what I was doing, switched over to his Regieleki Lunala mode that, man, I just really didn't have much for. The Meteor Beam Lunala just does so much damage, even to an Assault Vest Thundurus. And of course, Aleki, if I try to intimidate that with the Incineroar, well, Incineroar also goes down to the Meteor Beam. And so it was tough to kind of run into as much damage as he was able to put out, and I just couldn't keep up. And so after that set with Wolf, I ended up dropping the next 3 rounds, including 2 in a row to the exact same Zacian-Kyogre composition. It was one of the things that I brought Thundurus onto the team specifically to deal with, because there's a really nice matchup into both of those restricteds, but I just became hyper-focused on Dynamaxing Palkia, trying to run all my offense through that, and it just didn't work out in my favor. It wasn't all bad though. I met Gigawatts94, who makes some really fun YouTube videos as well. I linked to their channel below. They finished in the top 16 of that regional, which is really impressive given the the names that were at Secaucus that weekend. And of course they just did the video with the Caterpie team that's been floating around pretty recently that I really enjoyed. And so moving on from that, just had to make sure I got my mental right. I was able to, in round 6, finally get back in the winning column, playing against Alexander Adams. Alex was running the Zacian and Calyrex Shadow Rider team with an offensive Thundurus that had Taunt that really caught me off guard. My Grimmsnarl just got shut down turn 1 because of that, but I was able to pull off another one of the big tricks on this team, some really explosive turn 1s. Of course, the Grimmsnarl with the Thunder Wave gives me some instant speed control, and Palkia with the Max Quake and just one-shot all Zacians that aren't max HP. And so I was able to do that turn 1, game 1, and as well as game 3. And I was talking to Alex after the match, just saying, hey, my thought process there was, there's no way he's going to expect me to do it again, right? And so I was able to get a couple of big turn 1s in that set, leverage a lot of that to my advantage as well. That was a match that I was able to Dynamax Palkia, especially once I got those special defense boosts, deal with Calyrex Shadow Rider pretty easily, as well as the Incineroar and the Grimmsnarl doing a lot of damage there. And then after that, I played against a team that featured the Swamp. It was a full-pledged team with Sceptile, Primarina, and Incineroar all with their pledge moves. It really caught me off guard turn 1 when my opponent went for the Scarf Grass Pledge with Sceptile into Primarina's Water Pledge. Wasn't able to do much damage because I led Amoonguss Palkia, but really cool to see that some people are still trying to innovate in the metagame and bring some fun stuff to regionals. They really got me back into the right headspace into my last round against a Reshiram Groudon team. I was playing James McGarity, who, shout out to him. He went 0-4 in the first 4 rounds, and after the lunch break was able to turn around, finish 4-4, had a really nice run in the back half of the tournament. That was also my chance to get back to 500, and I mentioned it was a Reshiram Groudon team with a Venusaur that, really was one of the worst matchups that I think I could have run into with Palkia Zacian on the squad. Those, Incineroar was able to provide a lot of utility, being immune to the sleep powder because of the safety goggles, but I just wasn't able to do too much with it because the Groudon was just staring me right in the face, and Venusaur had Max Quake, and so did Reshiram, and just so much offense coming from different places that I really just wanted to, mitigate it as much as I could with Grimmsnarl, but I was able to win game 2, but not the set. So finishing 3 and 5, still really happy with the way that I was able to finish the tournament out. I felt that I had a really nice turnaround after losing a couple of matches in a row, especially round 5. I thought I had a really good shot. It went to 3 games, and I just, started playing in very predictable ways, fell into some old potholes. I wasn't able to win that one, but, had a really great time. And even though I wasn't able to crack top cut, get top 32, even get any CP out of it, I was able to come home with a little bit of gold that I found while I was waiting for the bus to get back on my way home. And so to recap, the team feels really good. I think, a couple of tweaks here and there, maybe Focus Sash over Mental Herb on Amoonguss, maybe a little bit more offense on Palkia, maybe even a little bit more speed on Zacian, as I try to speed creep just a little bit to be faster than other super bulky Zacians, and still end up getting outsped into a KO by every mirror match that I ran into. But, it's kind of a team that really doesn't beat itself. It feels very consistent. It has a lot of comeback potential with the substitute on Zacian, the late game Trick Room on Palkia, as well as the redirection on Amoonguss that can really turn the tide if you're able to position correctly there. But works out really well. Feel free to try it again. PokePaste rental codes are in the description below. Let me know what you think in the comments section. And I'm going to be starting streaming on Twitch, and so I put my Twitch link in the description as well. Please follow me there. It's Lintymon is my moniker. And just looking forward to seeing you there, seeing a couple more videos. You can expect some more VGC, some Nuzlocke content maybe, on the Twitch streams and on this channel as well. So really appreciate you watching through the whole video. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.